Okay, that's us recording. So anyone have any questions from last week or any questions about the assessment? No,
Nope.
you're all half asleep this morning. Fair enough. I'm the same. Okay, in that case, we'll get straight to today's lecture.
It's cold, cold, cold.
It is, although it's bright, bright, bright. I'm sort of looking out and it's sort of wispy clouds. And I can see for miles out there. Too bright, actually. You probably see me starting to squint as we move along.
Snowed up here.
Is it?
Yeah, it's kind of, I say foggy, but it's hazy, so it looks a bit weird, a bit different from yesterday.
Some snow and iron. It's not here. All right. What we wanted to talk about today was compliance. So we had an overview of controls last week, which are internal limits or goals that an organization wants to set for itself. Compliance is the same idea, but these are set by legislation. So they have responsibilities to do particular things at particular times. And I want to have a quick look at what some of those compliance types are. As I say, they most often correspond to the legislative responsibilities that they have. So I'll say again, if you haven't yet started going through those sections on legislation that are on Moodle, helps if I go to the right module, doesn't it? Yeah, computers as slow as us today. Okay, so remember we have all of these things down here with a hash that you should know. I'm assuming you've done them before. You told me when we started the module you'd done them before, because I kind of from earlier years. I'll expect references to these kinds of things in your report. Okay, so if you haven't yet started going through them, now would be a good time, if for no other reason than what I'd set aside the week after next is a day where it was just set aside. So I'll not do the legislation presentations, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have on these things in here. So it's up to you to look at them beforehand and then go over anything that you want me to in the 17th. That's always assuming that my voice holds out, so my apologies for croaking today. It could be one of those days. Okay, so compliance is talking about legislative responsibilities. It's confused, so sometimes you'll see documentation where controls and compliance are used interchangeably or used wrongly sometimes. But external rules and policies, so like legislation, is compliance. Internal rules and policies are controls. Sometimes it makes sense for organizations to treat them in exactly the same way. They might decide, no, we're just going to do what we have to do, and it's all going to be in one big framework. So they might refer to it in different ways. But if they fail to reach their own control, that's a problem because it's not what they wanted to do, but it's not an issue where the police are going to turn up at the door. There's different types. Broadly, there's different types of compliance. I mean, there's more, but these are the kind of broad outlines of the types of compliance that tend to be important for organisations. We've talked about financial compliance before. We started off way back, what was it, 10, I don't even know what week this is, 8 weeks ago or something. And we talked about the issues that Patisserie Valerie had because they did not perform due financial compliance. They had financial issues that saw the police called in, and the prosecutions are still ongoing. So that's a clear one. There's other ones as well. Trade compliance, things that you can and can't do for trade, for environment, for privacy. Which of course brings us back very much to things like GDPR. So most countries have clear regulations about what you can and can't do, what you must do in terms of your financial responsibilities. Most places those are continually strengthened, particularly following 2008 and the issues that happened then. It had an effect on most legislators where they understood that the financial legislative framework just wasn't strong enough for a lot of organisations. So you saw a lot of legislation put through to ensure that it was less of a gentleman's club and more about actually conforming to a proper set of legislative controls. It's not happened everywhere. So in the UK, for example, we still tend to have regulations, and you saw those a few weeks ago with the UK financial outlines. If you remember, it was a UK stewardship code rather than the UK Stewardship Act. So it was again back to the, well, you're all gentlemen and we expect you to conform to proper practices, otherwise we'll drum you out of our club. In fact, there are still plenty of people who believe that the push towards leaving the EU is purely down to the fact that there are further legislative controls that are going to be introduced in the EU from the 1st of January 2021. Again, fueling the fire for this push to leave before then. The compliance is what might, and certainly to me, seems a very simple thing. You have to declare what you earn and you have to pay tax on it. For some people, that's a big issue. They don't want to declare what they earn. They want to declare it in, Jersey or the British Virgin Isles or Cancun or wherever the local tax laws are helpful, so that they pay less tax. There are multiple instances of companies being incorporated in places like Liechtenstein. Now, from memory, I'm going to say Starbucks. I might be getting that slightly wrong, but my recollection is that it's one of these big companies. I'm going to say Starbucks, and I'll apologise to them in advance if it's one of the other ones. But my recollection is that Starbucks are registered in Liechtenstein, and every sale that they make in the UK is actually is charged to them by Liechtenstein. In other words, what they've set it up to do is say, well, if you're selling one of our coffees, we've told you how to make that coffee, so you have to pay us to allow you to make that coffee. So you give Starbucks £3. Starbucks in the UK gives Starbucks in Liechtenstein £2.95. So Starbucks in the UK pay tax on the 5p, and Starbucks in the UK in Liechtenstein don't pay any tax at all on the £2.95. Which is why you always see these things in the press about companies not paying their tax. So in 14 years, there you go, Starbucks, and you know how many Starbucks cafes, shops, outlets, I don't know what you call them, but for all the Starbucks in the UK, in 2012, they had paid 8.6 million over the last 14 years. Bringing it forward to 2019, they had changed their tax. They weren't paying only 8.6, they were paying 18.3. For almost 1,000 stores, they said that they only needed to pay tax of 18.3 million. They did, however, for those same 1,000 stores, pay 348 million in dividends, which is the money paid back to the shareholders of the company. How do they do it? Like I say, called it licensing. They were selling Starbucks coffee, not just coffee. And they pretended that that was the main part of what people were doing. They were buying it because it was Starbucks and not because it was coffee, and paying the money back in licensing fees. A lot of those things will be outlawed in the EU come next year. So depending on where you are, you have different laws, you have different standards, you have different amounts of tax, you have different ways that they're collected. So companies and organisations will always try and find their best place to be for tax. So, for those of you who don't know, Jacob Rees-Mogg is a member of the UK Cabinet. He's leader of the House of Westminster. His company showed £103 million profit over the last 5 years, but paid zero tax. Why did it pay zero tax? Because he'd registered his company in Cayman Islands. All the work was carried out in this company, all the money was paid in this country, all the profits were made in this country, but there was nothing coming back into the country. So they'll always try and structure their tax to pay as little as possible. But at least when they do pay it, and when you do present accounts, they literally need to be signed off. So there are issues around who takes responsibility. So if there is a problem, you can simply go, you signed this off. Why did you do that? And again, we've talked about that before in terms of things like Arthur Andersen, who didn't do it properly. Just this week, there was a big scandal because a city fund manager signed off the accounts for a company for which she wasn't a director, which is illegal. And she's trying to spin it as oh, I just forgot that I wasn't a director of that company anymore, which is, an interesting defense. But she's still responsible for it. And anybody who signs off for a company, for a charity, for any kind of organisation is actually responsible for those accounts in the same way as the person who actually did them. Which is part of the reason we come in to create automated systems to check all these things. It's fine if you're a news agent. You buy yourself a ledger book and you write down how much you brought in that day, and you write down how much you spent at the cash and carry that day. You take one from the other, that's how much you made. Excellent. No problem. But if you're a big company with multiple locations, maybe in multiple countries, with loads of employees working under different tax regimes, working under different tax amounts, all of these things get very complicated. So automated systems get really helpful at that point. So financial compliance is an absolute must. Nobody's jumping in to ask, so I assume you're all okay. Or you've stopped listening, it's one or the other.
No, we're okay.
Nope, just no questions.
I see here.
Just following intently.
Good. The next kind of major category is trade management. You might think it's dead simple just to sell something, but no, it isn't, because there may be issues with what you're selling and who you're selling it to. People tend to get upset if you're in the arms industry and sell arms to enemies of the country in which you work. And arms can be defined very widely. When I used to travel abroad in business, I used to take a laptop. Now, this was 25 years ago. The laptop had 640K of memory. It didn't have a hard disk, it had floppy disks. And it had a monochrome screen. But I had to get something called a carnet, C-A-R-N-E-T, which was a certificate to allow me to take that laptop out of the country and travel to see my customers, because it was officially designated as a weapon. They were terrified that the Russians would come and take my 286 computer and use it to launch intercontinental ballistic missiles. We've kind of lightened up a wee bit. They've kind of figured out there's easier ways for them to do it than for me to travel abroad and hand it over to my Russian contacts. But the things still apply. And they apply for really good reasons. even if we move away from something like arms, if you're going to import fruit and veg, well, what could be nicer than importing fruit and veg? It's good for you. Well, it's good for you unless what you do is you import some bug, some animal in your shipment that gets loose and takes over a native species. It's good unless, as part of your import, you bring in another type of plant which does the same. Welcome to Japanese knotweed getting everywhere. So there are controls in terms of trade management. There's controls in terms of what you can do. There's controls in terms of who pays the tax. If I decide I am going to start painting for a living and sell somebody a painting, and that person is in America, what are the rules? I sell them a painting for 100 quid. I send it to America. They send me 100 quid. Who pays tax on it? Do I pay income tax? Do I pay sales tax for America? Do they pay the sales tax? Does anybody pay the sales tax? I'm sure some of you listening to this will order things on eBay that come in with a wee thing, the label saying cost for tax purposes. Because if it's under a certain amount, there's no tax available, no tax applicable. All of these things start to come in, which is why sensible countries sign up to trade deals, just to allow them to trade easily from one place to another. Really stupid countries come out of trade deals to make it harder to sell elsewhere. So there's all sorts of issues around trade management as well. Issues that say, yeah, you can sell, but you have to tell us exactly what you're selling. You can sell, but you have to pay tax. You can sell, but we will charge you. The ludicrous Donald Trump decided he wanted a trade war. So if Scotland sells a bottle of whiskey in America, there's a 25% tax on it. Why? Because he wanted a better trade deal for the sorts of things that America sells us. So he won't let us sell things to him unless he can sell things to us. At which point you start getting into the, well, how much does it benefit us? Is it better for us to lower the tax on the cars that they make and send here so that they'll lower the tax on the whiskey that we send there, or does that actually cost us more? It all starts getting very complicated and very difficult to decide. And you're also left with the consequence that it works for some people and not for others. So if that was the case, that the tariff on cars came down, the people that make them in America are probably very happy. The people that make them in the UK are probably very unhappy because it means their cars are more expensive by comparison. So all of these things become very tricky, very difficult. And anybody who tells you that trade deals are easy, anybody who tells you that they are ready to sign, anybody who tells you that they are oven ready is lying. It's not how they work. It can't be how they work. No matter how much you want that to happen, no matter how much you want to wish that to happen, it simply cannot. Trade deals aren't a single sheet of A4 where you say, yeah, let's sell stuff to each other and you both sign it. Trade deals are thousands of pages of closely typed text that cover every option and say what will happen to that. Which is why if you're not a details person, trade deals are absolutely not what you should be involved in. Some people will try and help. So, for example, if you want to ship things to another country, there are shipping organisations who'll take care of all the labelling and shipping and paperwork. You'll pay them a fee, but it might be easier than doing it for yourself. That said, you're still responsible for it. So you can't say, oh yes, well, I was selling this gun and I gave it to the shipping company, so it's their fault. No, it's still your fault. All they're doing is helping you with the paperwork. So there's all sorts of compliance things for trade management, which again, automated help with. You can set up a rule in an automated system that says, if the sale that comes in is for Yemen, well, maybe we want to check what we can sell to Yemen this week. And you can set up rules in an automated system that say, well, we can sell them turnips, but we can't sell them guns. All of these things get automated for a good reason, because it helps people to comply with the legislation without necessarily knowing the detail. Someone does somewhere and someone has to keep it up to date, possibly you, but it means that everyone else can just say, yeah, well, if the system says it's okay with us. The next kind of main category is environmental compliance, which of course is huge these days. Does anyone recognize where that big cooling tower is?
So is that central in it or something like that? So it's
Just on George Square.
Almost.
God, I couldn't
That's
see.
Queen Street
No,
Station.
my window's in a tiny thing, so I guessed.
George Square, we are going to Queen Street. I can see Queen Street there.
Yep. So that's Queen Street Station, which, for those of you that don't know it, is right in the middle of Glasgow, a big city, lots of people, and there, right in the middle of the city, is a massive big cooling tower belching out a whole bunch of smoke and pollution, just ready for all those people to breathe in. We tend not to do that anymore. We tend to take environmental compliance a lot more seriously these days, for good reasons. The idea of building something like that in the middle of a city would just be unimaginable. That's not to say everybody believes in it. I take you back to Trump, who doesn't believe in environmental regulations and thinks that everyone should be free to do exactly what they want. Which leads to issues like this. In fact, I wonder, do I have a video?
Try to check your volume because I can't understand anything from here.
Bonnie's saying you don't understand. Oh, you can't hear it. Oh, sorry. Could nobody hear any sound there?
I can't hear it.
No, there was
Was
no
that-
sound. There was no sound on the video.
Nobody could come on and tell me that. Oh, rats. All right, basically, you saw the pictures, you saw the dirty water. People just tried to get around the environmental controls, and they ended up with dirty water that was making people sick. Part of the reason I showed that particular one is you probably saw some of the pictures talking about 2016 and how it needed to be fixed. Well, this is 2020 and it's still not fixed. Flint water is still undrinkable because nobody will take responsibility. They haven't, not only have they not complied with the environmental legislation, in fact, the environmental legislation has been rolled back in America. They've removed 64 rules and regulations, and they're in the middle of another 34. Why? Because it costs money to have an environmental compliance. Thankfully, here we are still doing those things. How long that will last will depend on the kind of people that we have ruling us. But we have environmental legislation covering all sorts of things. Most of it came from the EU, which is why I'm saying I'm not entirely sure how much we'll be able to hold that line, depending on who's in charge. But we have things like health and safety at work. We have control of substances hazardous to health. So in other words, if you're dealing with things like chemicals, you have to protect the workers that are dealing with them. And you might think, well, what do I care? I'm IT. Yeah, except if you change the toner in a laser printer and you accidentally inhale some of the toner, it's spectacularly carcinogenic. We have things like the Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Directive, the WEEE Directive, which means that you can't just take an old computer and chuck it in landfill. You have to recycle it responsibly. And there are places that make sure that you do that. So all organizations have to comply with this environmental legislation. I think what I'm going to do, actually, I know I said that I wouldn't do the legislation ones, but I think what I'm going to do is I will cover very briefly the outline legislation one. Okay, so we're talking about laws, we're talking about regulations, and we're talking about where they can take effect. So a law is written into statute, and it's something that everyone has to follow. The statute is what that actually is, which is why you hear things like a statute book. So the law is what you're doing, the statute where it's written. Regulations can be extended. So for example, I just spoke about the Health and Safety at Work Act. That came out in 1974, where people like me who spend most of their day sitting at a computer screen weren't really thought of. But the Health and Safety at Work Act could be updated with regulations that didn't have to go through Parliament again. So you could write a regulation, and they did write a regulation talking about what you had to do if you sat at a display screen. You have to have a chair that supports you, and you can't be staring into the sun and that kind of stuff. So we have laws, we have regulations that can extend them, and we also have to think about where those laws apply. So the scope of them, because it gets kind of tricky. So we're in Scotland, so we have proper Scots law. There is a different set of laws for England and Wales. So there's a different legal system in Scotland than there is in England and Wales. And in fact, Northern Ireland has its own laws too. Sometimes you'll see some lazy reporting on the news that talks about a new law, which is only for a particular part of the UK. So you need to check to see which part it's talking about. And we've noticed that particularly in the last few months, because if you turn on the BBC 6 o'clock news, it starts talking about new laws coming into the country, when the country that it's talking about isn't the country we live in. There are different laws, there are different rules, there are different regulations, and it's not always easy to understand where those laws apply. Some laws actually do apply over the whole UK. Not because there is UK law. So there aren't laws that apply over the whole UK. There are laws that have been adopted by the different legislative frameworks. So, for example, Westminster might decide to pass a law. Scotland might decide, yeah, that's a decent law, I'm happy with that. So rather than us going away, writing a whole new law, getting it passed, we simply say, see that law over there? We're having it. It's ours now too. Which seems odd, but actually we do it all the time, or have done it all the time, because that's exactly what happens with a lot of EU laws. The EU writes the law, and we write a law saying, see that EU law, that applies to us too. So there are different legislative frameworks depending on where you are. How long the EU one will last is unknown at the moment. I mean, we have certain issues such as GDPR. No one knows how it's going to affect us, Emmanuel. That's kind of the problem, because no one knows what's going on. So we've got GDPR laws, except they're not our GDPR laws. Those are GDPR laws that were written for the EU, which we then incorporated into Scottish law, and England incorporated them into English law too. And the sense we're getting, what we've been told is, oh yes, well, once we leave, we'll still do that. But there's not actually been anything passed to say, yes, we are doing that. We've just been assured. Now, I am not for one moment suggesting that the Westminster Tories would lie through their teeth and then go back on their word. But we just don't know at the moment what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to affect us. No one knows. Which brings us back to that trade deal thing. We don't yet have a deal on how things will work, on any sense. So we have 4 weeks and no one knows. It's ridiculous. Which is part of the reason I'm saying this is how it's working just now, but it may not work like this in the future, and no one really knows. So lots of institutions can enact laws, and there are different branches of law as well. So there's criminal law and there's civil law. Criminal law are things that are prosecuted by the state because they go against what we see as reasonable behaviour. Sensible countries are prosecuted by the state. Because we don't live in a sensible country, ours are prosecuted down, and we pretend that Benefits Betty is going to come down and care about what happens in our court. But if you punch somebody in the face, you'll be done for assault, and that's a criminal matter. You also need to be careful because some of the things you start to think about for law actually aren't the case. So you'll see things on, I don't know, some American crime series that says, oh, he get punched in the face, but he's not pressing charges. And that's not how it works for us. We say, no, it's nothing to do with the person that was punched in the face. What we're saying is punching somebody in the face is not the right thing to do. So we, as a state, are going to charge you. And whether the person that was punched in the face wants to charge them or not is nothing to do with it. We're saying it goes against what we think to be the right thing. So we are all, as a whole, going to prosecute you. And if you're convicted, it can be, a fine, it can be prison, it can be probation, it could be whatever. But there's also another branch to it called civil law, which is where there are issues between individuals or between corporations. And there are two different types of law, and they're prosecuted in different ways. Mostly civil suits are settled using money. So there's different legislative frameworks, there's different types of law, and there's lots of layers. If you go out and start shouting and screaming in the street, you'll be done for breach of the peace, which will go to a justice of the peace court, and you'll be fined £100 and sent on your way. If you then follow that up by going to break into somebody's house, which is a higher level in the scheme of things, you'll go to a sheriff court and they'll deal with it. And if while you were stealing something you kill somebody, you'll go to the Supreme Court to get prosecuted. So there's different levels of court as well, depending on the severity of the crime. And if you disagree with what happens, you can appeal it all the way up. And if you appeal it for a criminal matter, there's a high court to appeal to. And if it's a civil matter, it's a court of session. So if you don't like what happens at a lower court, you appeal to a higher court, and to a higher court, and to a higher court. So in Scotland, the top one to appeal to for criminal matters is the High Court, and for civil matters it's the Court of Session. If you get to the High Court, then it's over. So if it's a criminal thing, it's done. But actually, if it's a civil thing, there's another one. There's also something called the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom. So you can further appeal there. And above that again is the European Court of Justice. So you can go there where things breach your human rights. Or at least you can for the next 28 days, and no one knows what's going to happen in day 29. It's all a touch up in the air just now. And part of the reason I'm pointing all this out is because it means something for you in your career. You've all, you've all signed up for some online service, say, and you'll all have ignored the contracts that say read this and say that you agree, and you've all just went, yeah, I agree, that's fine. None of you, unless you want to tell me different, have ever actually read any of those documents. Am I wrong?
You're not. I'm raising up my hands.
So that then becomes an issue, because generally, if you punch somebody in the face and you both live in Scotland, Scottish, no problem. But what if you're a person in Scotland buying from England, where there's two different sets of laws? What if you're a person buying a service from an American company? What if you buy music from Spotify or Apple? You're in Denmark or California. Who is actually in control of that? And part of the reason I point out you've never actually read these things is, of course, there's usually a clause in there, something like this. If anything goes wrong, here's where it's going to be settled. In this particular case, it's Houston. The chances of you deciding to bring a prosecution in Houston because of something you've bought online are fairly low. But what if you're buying it for your company? What if you've just bought a massive service? What if you've bought a whole set of accounting systems that don't work anymore? For redress, your company would have to go to Houston, would have to hire American lawyers, you would have to get a date in an American courtroom. I have to wonder how well that would go over with an American jury. And as we were talking about GDPR, what if you're a Scottish company currently storing your data on Office 365? GDPR says that your data has to be stored in the area in which you live, which is fine, because we live in the EU. So your data is stored on Microsoft servers in the EU. Everyone's happy. 28 days from now, your data stored on those Microsoft servers is still going to be the same. The servers are going to be the same. And they're still going to be located where they've always been located, which is just outside Dublin. The difference is Dublin will be in the EU and we won't. Your data is no longer stored in your legislation, in your legislative scope. So in 28 days' time, there is a school of thought that says you will be breaking GDPR laws. And I say there's a school of thought because, of course, no one can give any sort of assurance on whether it does or not, because no one will actually come out with a definitive ruling. So at the moment, companies are sitting there going, in 28 days, I might be breaking the law. I'm not sure whose law, and I'm not sure where it's going to be prosecuted, and I'm not sure how it's going to work, but it's entirely possible. It all becomes a bit tricky. So that was a brief overview of legislation, which is quite handy for this kind of stuff, because the next major one is the privacy compliance. Because we have a duty to protect our customers' information. And if it's stolen, there's going to be a problem. Well, it depends who steals it. If, for example, you are TalkTalk, who had a massive data breach where all of the information was stolen by a 15-year-old, because, you know, they were definitely taking security seriously. That's why the 15-year-old could get in. And not only was it stolen, they didn't even bother telling people that their data was stolen. Why is that an issue?
I think there's a legislation for you to report if an incident like that happened. And if you don't comply to that, that means the company might be breaking the law.
That's all true, but I'm just thinking more for you as a person. If you were with TalkTalk and someone stole your information, why might you be upset that they didn't tell you?
Maybe they might have used your data, be like your credit card information, or somebody have used your data to go and do something with that information. So if they have told you, maybe you will have taken some actions. If you need to block your card, replace your card, you will have done that.
Absolutely. So if you have knowledge, because remember what TalkTalk have, they have their name, your address, they probably get your date of birth and all the other kind of security information you give them. They definitely have your credit card details, along with all of the stuff that goes with that, which means they can take your information and use it. And as you rightly say, if someone has told you that, you can probably do something about it. You can at least tell your credit card company, and they can give you different details, change your number, all that kind of stuff. But if they don't tell you, your stuff can be stolen. No one knows anything about it until such point as you have lost everything. So not only did they manage to lose data, they compounded it by not informing their customers, which could, and in some places did, make it worse. And part of the reason that one comes to mind is because normally that sort of thing would bar you from ever taking any sort of prominent position again. Anybody know who was the head of TalkTalk when this happened? It was someone called Dido Harding, and her punishment for being in charge of a company that lost everyone's data, that cost people lots of money, was to be appointed a baroness and to be appointed to the head of the English privatised Test and Trace. Because, of course, if you've already lost private information, who could be better than to store your private medical information and be in charge of storing that too? There might just be a problem there.
It's ridiculous. Who appoints these people?
Tory Health Secretary Matt Hancock, with the approval of the English Prime Minister.
I think we all have wrong friends.
Yeah. Because privacy is clearly an issue. It's an issue for every company, whether it's a simple one of names and addresses or whether it's more complicated and becomes about health information or financial information or anything like that. It's why people write end user agreements to make sure that they're covered. Have any of you ever done these? Can't remember the name of them. You take a swab and you send away your DNA, and it tells you, where your ancestors came from, that kind of thing.
No, I haven't done that.
Anybody?
No.
I hear about it.
I'm glad you haven't done it, and I'll tell you why. For those people that have done it and didn't read the agreement, it doesn't just send you back a fun wee thing that says you're 66% Viking. It takes that information, and you've signed something to say that that information could be used in any way that they want. What if that way is by sharing it with an insurance company? And what if, when you've sent away your DNA, you've got a DNA marker for cancer? If they have sold your data to that insurance company, all of a sudden, you can't get insurance. Or if you can, it will cost you much, much more. Because you've voluntarily told them that you might be susceptible to a deadly disease. Do you think that's possible?
Yes, very true.
Not only is it possible, it's already happened. It's already happened in America. And if you know anything about the American health system, it's privatized. So you pay a monthly premium for your health care. Guess what happened to those people who took the DNA test and found out that they might actually be more susceptible to getting ill? Guess what happened to their premiums every month? So it might be a good idea to read these agreements, particularly if you're responsible for them for your organization. Because if something happens, you might be asked why you agreed to transfer all the information to this third-party company. You might be asked why you agreed to allow any disputes to be mediated in Wisconsin. You might be asked why you signed up to something that didn't conform to Scottish law. So if you've not read the rules and you lose your iTunes account, that's annoying. If you haven't read the rules and you lose your company's accounts, user information, staff information, that's not just annoying, that's illegal. And the company will be held to account, as will you.
I can't even read English! Hey, shut up in there! You all agreed to stay quiet.
Hey, let me out of here! This is a... I agreed by accident!
You can't agree by accident. There's a fail-safe built in. Even if you click on agree, another little window pops up that says, "Are you sure you agree?" And you have to click on agree again.
What are you going to do to us?
Anything they want. Questions?
Nope, none from me.
Okay, so it's like last week again. So I will be here till 1 o'clock. What I want you to do is think about that in terms of the case study. Try and put that together with legislation. So if you have environmental compliance issues, what might that include? If you have financial compliance issues, what might that include? And start understanding what could actually happen to you if you don't follow that legislation. Exactly how long could people put you in jail? So as I say, I'll be here till 1 o'clock. If you have any questions, you can stay in the meeting, you can head off. It's entirely up to you. If you want to chat, I will be here to chat. But if no one has any questions, I am going to stop the recording.